Hi, this is Andy Hoffman of CryptoGoldCentral.com and the World Crypto Network. It's Saturday morning, February 10th, and in today's special crypto audio blog, I fully detail the Bcash scam story from its ill-begotten, malicious beginning through this week's failing pump, as the world starts to realize it's an all-out crypto scam. To that end, consider that in 2017, the event that catalyzed Bitcoin's historic price surge was its victory in the scaling debate against, for all intents and purposes, two rogue sociopaths, Roger Ver and Jihan Wu. For 2 years, much was made of the contention within the Bitcoin community regarding whether big blocks were the solution to scaling, or the soft fork the Bitcoin core development team invented, known as segregated witness. However, what it really came down to was two men's desire to usurp control of the decentralized Bitcoin protocol through their power in the still tiny Bitcoin community. Ver, because he had been fortunate enough to acquire an enormous Bitcoin position in the early years, and Wu, because his company, Bitmain of China, was the world's largest Bitcoin miner. Together, they recruited a handful of high-profile bad actors to promote their scam, like John McAfee, Gavin Andreessen, and fake Satoshi Craig Wright to help. And in time, clueless and/or incentivized drones like Eric Voorhees, Jeff Berwick, Coinbase, and CNBC. However, there was never any real debate about what's best for Bitcoin, but instead an elaborate pump and dump scam using the propaganda and collusionary negotiating skills of the former Bitcoin Jesus and the mempool spamming power of Bitmain to create, for a time, a fictitious Bitcoin competitor. In fact, I bet Wu's agenda was entirely different from Ver's, as while Ver's was to take over Bitcoin, Wu simply wanted to avoid SegWit because it would prevent Bitmain from continuing to use the ASICs boost fraud it had developed, enabling it to unethically mine more Bitcoin than competitors. Not to mention the ant-bleed malware it implanted in its mining equipment as the world's largest producer of such, enabling it to prevent customers from benefiting too from ASICs boost. For these two selfish advantages, the two utilized May's New York agreement to organize SegWit 2x, hoping to renege on it by implementing only the 2x hard fork, while at the same time preventing the Bitcoin community from benefiting from SegWit. However, it backfired on them 2 months later, when the fraudulently named user-activated hard fork proposed by Bitmain to scare Bitcoiners into believing a network split was imminent was called out by the Bitcoin community's user-activated soft fork. Not to mention Charlie Lee's seamless implementation of SegWit on Litecoin, which ultimately pushed through Bitcoin's SegWit locking in mid-July. To counter this, Ver and Wu haphazardly, seemingly out of nowhere, with the aid of a then little-known Chinese miner called HitBTC, which it turns out Bitmain is a major shareholder in, forked Bcash 2 weeks later on August 1st. My guess is they had not a clue what they were doing, which clearly their bug-ridden software proved in spades when it was required to be hard forked itself 3 months later. Other than that is to save face for being defeated in Little Bighorn style by the UASF and simultaneously create a vehicle to achieve their selfish, malicious goals at the Bitcoin community's expense. With the global cryptocurrency community watching with bated breath, Bcash failed to split Bitcoin when it forked, which in turn prompted the Bitcoin price to rocket higher. This whilst Ver's Bcash was itself rocketing higher, both absolutely and in Bitcoin terms, in a post-IPO surge based on entirely the hype foisted on clueless traders about what the former Bitcoin Jesus, now Bitcoin Judas, could do with the first ever Bitcoin hard fork. Bcash then immediately plunged to below its pre-fork futures price of 0.1 Bitcoin before the first of the half-dozen collusive, malignant pumps occurred mere weeks later, in the familiar manner we have come to know well, i.e., out of the blue, Bcash's price, fueled principally by a handful of Asian exchanges, suddenly rockets higher, typically on weekends when liquidity is at its lowest. This while simultaneously, Bitcoin plunges, likely because Ver was personally selling. Typically, these pumps occurred during Bcash propaganda events or orchestrated collusions, like the Hong Kong Bcash conference or surprise Bcash launch on Coinbase, synchronized perfectly with a Ver interview on CNBC, whose Twitter account, which posted tweets like, "Deal with the fact Bcash is the new Bitcoin," is coincidentally managed by the wife of one of Ver's top henchmen. Without fail, said henchmen come out in full force with propaganda of how Bcash is taking over Bitcoin, whilst Wu, as usual, plays his part by aggressively spamming the Bitcoin network to make it appear slow. Always, I might add, just before Bcash's emergency difficulty adjustment malware kicks in, enabling it to temporarily, unsustainably draw network caching power. In self-defeating hyperinflationary manner, hence the subsequent Bcash hard fork, to mine empty Bcash blocks because no one uses it, whilst Ver helped to boost Bcash's price by personally selling some of his Bitcoin stash and invariably being caught lying about it afterwards. It worked like a charm the first 4 or 5 times, the most malicious at the time being the November 10th to 12th raid. This just 2 days after Bitcoin's most massive political victory yet, when Ver's SegWit 2x hard fork scam, which in reality had been neutered by Bcash, was canceled, which in the space of 3 days caused Bitcoin's price to plunge from 7,900 to 5,500, whilst Bcash's price pumped. However, it as usual fizzled out when miners inevitably returned to Bitcoin. Ver ran out of Bitcoin to sell, and Bitmain ran out of capital to continue spanning the Bitcoin mempool, which subsequently caused the Bitcoin price to rocket higher in recognition that this game was nothing more than that. Yes, Ver tried one more last-ditch attack on Thanksgiving Day just as Americans sat down for dinner, but that too failed, resulting in Bitcoin exploding to $20,000 within a month, when it was realized what a scam Bcash was, as opposed to the competitor the Bitcoin Judas made it out to be. At this time, a cornered Ver, as arrogant and full of hubris as a Shakespearean classic tragic hero, devised his most aggressive, malicious, and in any other market illegal attack yet. In this case, Coinbase, which had actively supported every Ver move to date out of its selfish, client-damaging desire to avoid SegWit activation, and CNBC, whose Twitter feed was managed by the wife of the man running the Bcash investment fund, were solicited to execute an elaborate but painfully transparent scam on the Bitcoin community. Coinbase, which for 4 months had prevented clients from splitting Bcash from their Bitcoin, had been promising to enable this feature on January 1st, and simultaneously it was inferred support Bcash trading. However, what they did instead was, quite obviously in a 100% exclusively timed manner, was suddenly launch Bcash splitting and trading just as Ver commenced the Bcash pump / Bitcoin dump to exacerbate its impact. The strategy massively backfired, as Coinbase was so inundated by orders, likely to sell Bcash for Bitcoin, it was forced to be taken down for nearly a week, leaving clients in limbo, unable to do anything. That said, the desired 100% manipulated price impact was amplified by Ver's simultaneous appearance on CNBC and the aforementioned CNBC tweets. This, as unbeknownst to Ver, an industry-wide cryptocurrency price decline was commencing. Yet again, for a brief period of time, Ver succeeded in pushing Bcash to 0.2 to 0.25 BTC, entirely due to a manipulation that unquestionably netted him, Wu, a handful of Coinbase and CNBC employees, and likely the rest of his collusively engaged henchmen, massive insider trading gains at the expense of the Bitcoin community, and likely the legions of clueless traders, principally in Korea and China, who bought the BCH BTC surge only to yet again get wrecked when the fraud it was perpetrated on inevitably fizzled out. Of course, given that cryptocurrency is 100% unregulated, there's no such thing as insider trading. So while this kind of fraud would be unquestionably prosecuted in legacy financial markets, it's 100% legal in crypto. A great scam while it lasts, but in time bearing significant irreversible costs in terms of the damage to Bcash's reputation as well as all the bad actors involved. All along, while these half-dozen major 100% fraudulently, collusively orchestrated attacks were periodically occurring over a period of 5 months, the giant pink elephant in the room was starting to get noticed, which is that Bcash's use case was starting to be recognized for the fraud it always was, i.e. that scaling on-chain with bigger blocks is literally impossible, as my good friend Rocky Palumbo proved in his must-watch one-on-one podcast appearance last month. In fact, now that SegWit adoption on Bitcoin is surging, heck, even Coinbase is about to implement it, as the slowdown in business caused by the crypto crash is forcing it to address angry clients' concerns, and the Lightning Network is being rolled out faster than expected, the obviousness of Bitcoin's speed and Bcash's non-usage is becoming painfully obvious. In fact, Bcash is losing hash rate to Bitcoin at a record rate, as literally no one is using it, other than to instantaneously sell it to greater fools. Moreover, Bcash's war chest has clearly been depleted, as not only has Ver sold a significant portion of his invaluable Bitcoin to buy worthless Bcash, but Bitmain, besieged by new mining and mining hardware competition, not to mention threats by the Chinese government of reduced electricity subsidies, cannot waste any more money spamming the Bitcoin mempool, particularly in the Bitcoin community, which now includes major deep-pocketed institutions, is onto the scam. Thus, as discussed at length on my appearance on Friday's Must Listen This Week in Bitcoin with Adam Meister, Bcash's scam is rapidly fizzing out, with potentially disastrous ramifications to the BCH-BTC ratio. Since the year-end CNBC, Coinbase, Bcash, Pump/Bitcoin raid, the BCH-BTC ratio has fallen back, or had fallen back, to 0.12, or 50% of its peak level during the pump, with yet again no one caring about it in this worthless scam coin in the slightest. However, now that the Bitcoin community is onto the scam, it has been watching with an eagle eye for the upcoming Bcash pump ahead of the February 15th Anarchapulco conference, run by Jeff Berwick, who was once Bitcoin's biggest supporter, but in the past year turned to the dark side of being an all-out Bcash shill. In advance, I put out a special crypto audio blog on January 27th to warn the Bitcoin community it was coming, as well as the following tweet, which was liked at a viral rate. The whole world is on to you, Roger Ver and Dollar Vigilante. The entire global Bitcoin community knows you are planning a new BCH pump/BTC dump at or just before Anarchapulco 215 and will be ready. Try it, we dare you. No doubt, Ver was aware of this and other Bitcoin community attempts to boost awareness. So instead of launching his latest attack right at the time of the conference, he started a week early, when last Wednesday night, February 7th, Bcash suddenly pumped 30% for no reason. Coincidentally, he was interviewed on the widely watched Alex Jones Conspiracy Show just as the pump was occurring. But as you'll hear from the listener's call starting at the 25-minute mark, the Bitcoin community was well aware of what was occurring, viciously calling out Bear for the Bcash scam. Moreover, unlike all other Bcash pumps, the Bitcoin price was completely unaffected, as while the usual one or two Asian exchanges took Bcash's price from 0.12 to 0.16 Bitcoin overnight, Bitcoin's price was rising too. And as I write this morning, Bcash is back under 0.15, closer to 0.145, having failed to materially rise this time around, either absolutely or relative to Bitcoin. In other words, a miserable failure, which likely will be validated in spades when Anarchapulco passes next week with no further damage, now that the community is aware of the blatant orchestration and thus failure of the latest pump. All along, I've espoused that while Bcash will always have a following due to Ver's influence over idiots, as well as the fact that the institutional wall of money coming into crypto has few liquid assets to choose from, it will over time dramatically decline versus Bitcoin, given that it has zero use case, zero chance of competing with Bitcoin, and zero advantages over dozens of other cryptocurrencies that can do exactly the same thing, many SegWit enabled and thus vastly faster and cheaper than Bcash. Will this week's Anarchapulco Bcash boondoggle prove to be its Waterloo, when the investment community finally realizes en masse what a scam it is, or will it take a bit longer? I don't know, but what I do know is that anyone who has sold Bitcoin to buy Bcash, most notably Roger Ver, is going to be a big, long-time loser. Thanks, and have a great crypto day.